Today's podcast is brought to you by Funny Bone Broth, now available at Italy and McEwen's in the TD Center. Or you can visit them at funnybonebroth.com.
In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast. My name is Ben Grant, joined again by JB.
Hello, all.
I got to apologize in advance. I've got a bit of a cold, a little under the weather. I'm not great with my cough button, but I'll do my best not to have a coughing fit in the middle of the podcast. So we got a bunch of things to talk about today. Why don't we start off by talking about the Touchdown Atlantic that the CFL has just announced, of course, involving the Toronto Argonauts. So the details are Halifax, July 25th, Saskatchewan at Toronto in Halifax. Thoughts?
Well, I am from Halifax, so I'm really excited to be able to see the Argos in Halifax at Husky Stadium. I also went to St. Mary's. So
now,
it's kind of
is
a
this
unification for me?
July 25th falls, I believe, somewhere in the middle of those 2 weeks of summer that Halifax gets?
The end of July is knocking on summer in Halifax. You're close enough to see it, and then you enjoy it until
Second week of August?
Yeah, mid-August. So it's kind of right, it's very close to the sweet spot of the summer.
I think it's exciting that it sounds like they're going to try and do a 3-day lead up. Basically, they're going to make it feel like a Grey Cup kind of environment, like a 3-day party, family-friendly festivities for 3 days leading up to the game, which I think will be great. I think, again, in Halifax, it's such a nice setting, and those 3 days will be awesome. They're trying to pump up the sort of CFL spirit in Halifax.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be perfect if they could have figured out a way to build a stadium large enough to host a team where Husky Stadium is, because you're downtown, you're by the park. It would be an absolutely perfect place to host the team, but there's no parking, and there are a lot of rich people who would complain about the unwashed walking around their neighborhood. But for one game, I'm very excited to see how old rickety Husky Stadium holds up to some CFL action, and maybe it builds some interest. I think I personally would love for there to be an Atlantic CFL team.
I think most CFL fans are in that boat. Pardon the pun. We want there to be, well, first of all, like for me, I want there to be 10 teams. So I'm actually quite partial to Quebec City as a location for a team, but I love the idea of there being an Atlantic team. I wouldn't mind there being 12 teams in the league, and I think certainly Quebec City could support a team. I feel very strongly that the Atlantic can support a team. I think Halifax probably is the best location for that, but I don't know as much as you do in terms of what that market's like, how it would sustain.
There's some interest in Halifax. I wouldn't say they have CFL fever. But neither does Toronto.
Sometimes.
So there is interest, I think, in a team in Halifax. There was talk about having it in Shannon Park, former military area. That's gone by the wayside. The new place is outside the city. I think the location is decent. They can't have it on the peninsula. There's no room for it, but the question is money. There certainly is no stomach from the provincial government to throw in or throw away $100 million so some private company can have a football team. I mean, I think that was the case for a long time, but people are, much like nobody wants the Olympics, I think people have finally awoken to the idea of buying a team for a person or company is, like buying the 407 and giving it away. It's really stupid.
So you don't think there's any chance, because I think this would be awesome. You don't think there's any chance that they announce during this 3-day festivities that there is going to be a team?
Well, I'm sure they would love to sell.
It would be awesome. Like, imagine that if there was some sort of, major event during those 3 days and they announced it right there in front of all these Halifax CFL fans.
The city has said they'll kick in 20.
20 million or $20?
20 million in post-dated check.
Leaving them 100 million short.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of, now...
In maritime dollars, that's...
could you just build it out of, wood?
You could build it out of wood. Nova Scotia has a long shipbuilding tradition.
There you go. So make it look like a boat.
The golden age of Nova Scotia was the shipbuilding era. It was a long time ago.
So you don't think that? Do you not think this is going to happen? Like, what's the sense? Like, you were there recently. Like, what's the sense in Halifax?
The sense is nobody wants to pay for a team.
But do they think it's going to happen anyway, or they're like, well, this is just never going to happen?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any push for the government to get behind this. I think their only hope is to convince one of the oligarch families out east, and there are oligarchs out there, the Sobeys or the Irvings or a variety of other families who have lots of money. If they would be interested,
it's a drop in the bucket for Irving, like Irving Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're more New Brunswick than Nova Scotia, but I don't know. It doesn't look good. There's definitely no stomach for the government spending any money.
Is this like the CFL's motivation? Are they running this event as they did last year to try and convince the government that this is a worthwhile investment? Are they trying to get the people to rise up and demand that their government put the money out?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of all of that. I think if people have a good time like they did in Moncton, that will put pressure on the government to continue this.
And hopefully they get another great game. Like, that game in Moncton was one of the best. Well, that was probably the most exciting Argos game of the year.
I mean, I guess the worry is that people just enjoy the one game a year and say, let's keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think...
Because it doesn't cost us any money.
It's not going to take that long before those games start appearing in Quebec City instead of Halifax and Moncton, if that's the attitude.
I think it's definitely some of that. Maybe some big money investors see the interest, and the problem is, I mean, CFL ownership is a problem. It has been for a long time. The problem is there's no money to be made in it, so you have to be somebody who loves football, and you really want to own a team as a prestige toy.
A prestige hobby, kind of.
Yeah, and I don't know, there's a football tradition out east. I mean, CIAU football was big for a long time. It's played in the high schools in Nova Scotia.
It doesn't seem to have, like, U Sports now doesn't seem to draw the same interest that it once did back in those sort of St. Mary's powerhouse days.
It's definitely hockey first out east.
All right, well, that's something to look forward to. It'll be an event. I'm excited about it. It'd be nice to be able to get out for that. That would actually be a pretty cool road trip to take at the end of July there, because again, to catch beautiful city in its best couple of weeks. The exciting part for me of Halifax having a team, I love the idea of games in Halifax in late October. Just in terms of CFL weather, like, we see some crazy stuff in CFL games, weather-wise, once it gets late in the season. I love what some of that will look like. You talk about those classic games, fog bowls and stuff like that. The weather that would come in, off the ocean and just pound that stadium.
It is good. Now, Does Halifax have the same kind of American obsessiveness to watch sports in that weather? I think is
I think there's a point of pride on that.
$1 million question.
I think a game that is, sleet and fog filled would actually draw better than one that's just sort of like an average fall day. I think there's something that sort of brings out the absurdity of it all, and people kind of rise to the occasion for stuff like that. It's you see people without shirts and whatever else.
I think the potential's there. I think if they can find a way to get the tailgate. I know most teams have never really been able to figure out tailgating within the restrictions of the law. I think the team could work. I really do. It's just I think there's just no hunger. Politicians have a hard time convincing people to do the Commonwealth Games, to do the Olympics, those sorts of things. People just don't believe in spending taxpayer money on bringing those events to town. So I don't know. I'm not optimistic unless somebody is able to, they find a football fan who wants a hobby.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. We're going to talk about a report from earlier in the week from 3 Down Nation, suggesting that the Argos will shortly be announcing Jarius Jackson as offensive coordinator, Glenn Young as defensive coordinator, and Mark Nelson as the special teams coordinator. So this hasn't been confirmed yet. I saw it was briefly on the CFL Twitter timeline and then removed. They were citing 3 Down Nation as well. These are some interesting names. I was actually quite excited by these 3 names, and we don't know if this is the Argos haven't officially said anything yet. So we'll have to wait on that until we've got guys that aren't under contract and so forth. But let's talk about each of these guys. So Jarius Jackson as offensive coordinator, I think, is really interesting. So he was the offensive coordinator the last couple seasons in BC. Really bright guy, innovative, is not afraid to try new stuff. But what I wonder is, what kind of job is this? Like, if you're the offensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts this year, are you the offensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts, or are you running practice as the Toronto Argonauts offensive coordinator?
Well, we spoke about this before off air, and I agree with your take that it's probably the Calgary model, and that he's going to play the role of Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I think like Dinwiddie. I would imagine if Jarius Jackson's the guy coming in, I imagine it's Dinwiddie's system, and I imagine it's Dinwiddie's game plan, maybe in collaboration with Jackson, and then Jackson will be, running the game plan from for the offense as Dinwiddie is able to, travel around and check on every positional group on both sides of the ball and sort of be a part of, the whole team as a head coach should be. But ultimately, it'll be his stuff that Jackson's running. But Jackson's a guy I really like. I think there's something there. Again, I love his intelligence. I love that he has experience and he's faced adversity in almost everywhere he's been. He's been doubted all along the way too. Which a little bit like Dinwiddie was, where he wasn't necessarily the guy coming in everywhere. And he saw that at Notre Dame. He saw that when he got to the CFL and when he bounced around the league a little bit. And he, kept getting put back there as the third string guy, only to succeed every time he got a chance. So I like his fight, I like his spirit, I like his brain.
BC was not a terrific team last year. Well, the offense was sort of marginally better than ours statistically. They
looked very good in that game we played against them in BC when they beat us 55-8. They looked like the best offensive team ever. And so I could see Toronto Argonauts brass looking at that game and thinking, wow, we got to get some of these guys here. But yeah, if you look at them, obviously they didn't have a great year. They had a couple weapons, like Burnham produced really well for them. But I just don't know that they had. I want to blame some of their problems more on personnel than I do on the coaching staff. I think the coaching staff there that was ultimately dismissed got a little bit of a raw deal. I don't really think they were given a fair shot, and so I'm excited to give a guy like Jackson a chance. I think he'll do well in Toronto. So hopefully that comes through, and hopefully Jackson is announced soon as the new offensive coordinator for the Argos.
Yeah, I hope too, based on his playing career, I hope too that he brings a desire to have the quarterback be more mobile, which is something that a lot of teams in the CFL seem to be moving a little bit away from. But I think if you look at the CFL field and the way the NFL is heading, I think a quarterback who can occasionally burn you, or you can design runs for, makes for a more challenging team to prepare for.
Dinwiddie's system isn't one that has quarterback runs per se, but the quarterback is on the move a lot. There are a lot of rollout passes, but you don't see a lot of quarterback draws or design quarterback runs, student body left, or anything like that. That's just not his style, because that's not the kind of quarterback he was. So he never played in a system like that. Jackson's seen a little bit of both. He's played in systems where he was a runner, but he's also played in systems where he was counted on to drop back and pass.
Yeah, I think the potential mixture of their styles is encouraging.
I think the more quarterbacks you have on the offensive side of the ball in terms of the coaching staff for this league, the better. So, yeah, I think it's a real positive addition. Let's talk about Glenn Young. So, Glenn Young is being reported as the new defensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts. So, Glenn Young is currently under contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He served as the linebacker and defensive line coach this past season. He's a linebacker specialist. He played linebacker. He's coached linebackers. I like that he's a Canadian guy. I love seeing Canadian coaches given a shot. And, he was born in Scarborough, ended up playing at Syracuse, and then had a little bit of a career in San Diego, and then a few seasons in Toronto that we remember, Alouettes for a year, Edmonton Eskimos to finish out his career. But yeah, really good linebacker with a lot of knowledge. Coming out of a winning system in Winnipeg, the season they went through this year can only have been a positive thing for him. And the Argos are a team that needs to be better at linebacker this year. And so I like bringing in, not a young guy, he's 50 years old, but young in terms of coaching experience, a guy that, hasn't been around forever as a coach. And, he'll get a shot.
Young in name, if not in person.
Yeah, 50 seems a lot younger than it once did for me.
Yes.
And now I say 50-year-old coach. I'm like, oh, I got a young guy.
Young man with a long and impressive future in front of him.
That's right. So we'll see. But guys are coaching into their 70s now. Who knows? This could be the start of a 20-year post with the Toronto Argonauts. So yeah, Glenn Young coming in. We don't have much to go on. He hasn't been a defensive coordinator before, and so it's going to be interesting to see what his defense looks like. I imagine we're going to see a very similar style to what we saw in Winnipeg, which is aggressive, very linebacker influenced, a lot of heat. It's going to be fun to watch that, because I think that I think our defense had a better personnel than it might have appeared during the season last year. Like, certainly we did have some weak spots, but I think that we kind of underperformed. I think we had some great athletes who weren't really allowed to showcase what they could do, and hopefully Glenn Young can do a little bit of that. So, but we don't know. We don't know what he's going to bring. But again, for me, I think that's exciting. I would rather bring in a guy like Glenn Young than a guy who has been a defensive coordinator for 30 years on 7 different teams, and for me, that's just not what we're looking for.
Well, it makes sense to bring in a guy from the team that won the Grey Cup. I think that that doesn't always work. Championship teams are pretty commonly rated for talent, but it does make sense to, if we can't get O'Shea, to get the next best thing that was available and price effective.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to cost that much.
Nope.
But if you are trying to build a program, if you are trying to create something, as Pinball talked about, that's going to be lasting and not the roller coaster of Grey Cup garbage, Grey Cup garbage, I think it is smart to hire somebody who is going to be maybe a little more willing to get on board with the team program, a team model, not necessarily have as many ingrained beliefs as somebody who's been a defensive coordinator before. So if you are trying to mold, I think that these coaches are more open to being molded than they are going to come in with a belief that, this has always worked and this will always work, that you might get from a more mercenary hire.
Now that transitions nicely into our special teams hire, our potential reported on special teams hire.
Speaking of mercenaries.
Yes. Mark Nelson.
Affordable mercenaries.
Mark Nelson has been coaching for a long time. So he's reported to be the new special teams coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts. Another Canadian guy from Edmonton. He started coaching early 90s, and he's coached for so many different teams in every league imaginable. And he's served as D-line coach. He's served as D coordinator, as running backs coach, linebackers coach, DBs coach. And he spent 10 years doing special teams. Most of his special team stuff was in the NCAA, but he has done some special team work in the CFL, although brief stints in relief. I like him because I think he is an ear for Glenn Young. This is a guy that has been around a lot longer than Glenn Young in terms of his coaching career. He's 63 years old, but he's been coaching for a long time, and this is a guy that Glenn can turn to and say, I want to run some things past you, because Mark Nelson has that experience and he's seen it all before. And so I think when going back to the press conference, that the Dinwiddie's introductory press conference, he talked about how he wanted a mix of different people coming in. He recognized that he was a young coach and wanted to bring in a mix of young and old. And I guess Mark Nelson is the old that he was talking about, a guy that can provide a bit of guidance and a bit of help and just that extra ear in the room to bounce ideas off.
Yeah, it makes sense to bring in an experienced coach at special teams rather than OC or DC. In terms of the hierarchy of a staff, that the veteran coach won't usurp the younger coaches as a special teams coach.
Now, where I want to get some clarity on, because I had thought originally that before this report came out, I thought that Mark Nelson was going to BC. So I had heard that reported. I know I had seen it online as well, that he was going to be the special teams coordinator in BC. And so, we've got to figure that out. So if that's what the report is, that Mark Nelson is going to be the special teams coordinator in Toronto now, what happened we've got to still have this report confirmed. At some point, the Argos are going to come out and make a statement on hirings, or obviously at some point they have to address who the coaching staff is, and we'll see what happened there, because I bet you there's something interesting that went on in those conversations between Mark Nelson, BC, and the Toronto Argonauts.
I think anytime you can poach a staff from Ottawa, you have to.
Yeah, turn to Ottawa and BC for all of your hires.
I think when you look around the league and you think, well, who would we like to emulate? I think.
But again, I think that the Ottawa staff, just like the BC staff last year, it's unfortunate because both of those staffs got dealt a pretty bad hand. I don't think the Ottawa staff was treated fairly. I think they they are better than their record indicated, just like BC's staff was better than what their record indicated. I feel like the Toronto Argonauts staff pretty much was what our record indicated from last year, and so we clearly needed to make changes. But I have no problem with picking up anyone from that Ottawa or BC staff. I thought their coaching staffs were good, but their records weren't. So, and that's the reality of coaching in the CFL in this day and age. Is you have a bad season, and that might be it.
It will be a challenge for Dinwiddie to take these disparate coaches from different programs of different age, different backgrounds,
and guys that he hasn't really worked with before.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. I know there's probably only so many people that they could poach from Calgary, but usually coaches will. Now maybe he has connections. Who knows? Maybe he knows them already. But you would hope that there is some connection and that they're not just going to kind of have this mix of coaches from random teams come together and sit in a room, which I think will make it challenging to create a cohesive program. I mean, I'm putting faith in the team that they are looking to create a cohesive program from top to bottom, and these coaches are fitting the model that they're looking for. So I'm gonna give Pinball the benefit of the doubt.
All right, we'll move into our last segment of the day. You wanted to talk a little bit about XFL rules. Why do you find rules of other leagues so interesting? Because I know it's something that you find fascinating. You've written about it on xsandArgos.com.
I do. Even when I coached and would have meetings with season end meetings, I would always push for changes. I think that evolution is important for a number of reasons. First and foremost is player safety. I really feel, and I'm going to probably write something about this at some point, I really feel the CFL has an opportunity to brand itself, to lead the player safety fight. I know the last CBA, the players got the ability to have a second opinion on concussions, which is good. But I mean, I really feel the CFL should become the league that is about player safety. And one of the things that interests me about rule changes is keeping the game interesting and fun to watch, but not sacrificing the safety of the players and the long-term safety of the players. And so I'm fascinated at how to do that. That it's not just like, well, let's get rid of this. It's, why don't we tweak this? Why don't we try that? Why don't we, I'm not I don't know what would you say? Like I'm not sort of a traditionalist when it comes to rules. To me, I'm up for discussing almost anything and then maybe throw some of it away. But I don't think that we should act like our league is perfect. I think there's lots of stuff. I think there's lots of rules we have which are great. I think there's lots that we should take a look at to tweak as more knowledge goes by, as the players change, as philosophies change about football. I'm all for being intelligent about a sport.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of these. We'll take a look at not all of the XFL rules that are different, but we'll take a look at some. Some seem to be about entertainment. Some seem to be about player safety. So let's talk about some that I guess are more for entertainment. So the point after. So I gather they're not going to kick any point afters, that you're going to have an opportunity to convert a touchdown either from the 2-yard line, the 5-yard line, or the 10-yard line, and that would be a 1, 2, or 3-point conversion. That's interesting.
Yeah, they're definitely the XFL seems to be phasing out the kicker a little bit. We'll get to their kickoff conversation, but yeah, I think it's terrific. Why not? Why not have the opportunity to go for 3? I mean, I feel like giving teams, I'm a proponent for moving the 2-point closer to make it more enticing for coaches, because I think that's more exciting. I think the more random scores you have, the more it changes the tried and true philosophy, and the more coaches are put into challenging mathematical situations about, do I go for 3? Do I go for 2?
I guarantee you the analytics are going to tell you to go for 3 on every touchdown.
I think that's great.
Because to go a 10-yard pass completion, you're going to be about 50%. 3rd and 10, 3rd and goal from the 10. We're talking about just about a 50% number. To get 3 points out of that, I think is worth your while. So, and that's exciting. That's interesting. I always need. I'm not as open to change as you are. I need convincing. It sounds exciting. I'm glad it's not my league right now. Like, I'm more excited to watch another league.
It's still not that radical. I mean, at the end of the day,
it totally throws off the way you think about scores and stuff.
A converted touchdown and a field goal is still 10 points. Still 2 possessions, even with the 3-point play. So you don't, the possessions haven't changed. So if you score a touchdown and convert it and kick a field goal, you're still 2 possessions ahead of the other team. They can't make up your field goal.
No, but if you score a touchdown and get a 3-point conversion, you're up 9-0.
Right.
And now you get a field goal on top of that. Now you're up 12-0.
Right.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
But it throws off the way that you think about possessions and scoring.
Yeah, I think that's what's terrific. It doesn't change the game. It just changes the strategy and the way you have to think about it. I don't see it as video gaming the sport.
I do a little bit.
Would the NBA take back the 3-point?
No, that worked out really well.
Right.
But that took a bit of adjustment too. I was one of the people that was really excited by the 3-point line, but we're talking about a long time ago.
No, I think it's fantastic. I would love. Well, what I would love is for the CFL. It always frustrates me when teams do not take preseason to try all of this stuff. It's just such a closed-minded attitude to preseason, where, I mean, especially in the second half, where...
Well, I guess coaches don't really want to be thinking about that. They're trying to evaluate talent. We're trying to say, okay, well, let's take a look at our 4th, 5th, 6th string running backs, instead of thinking about, oh, wait, what's the math here? I should go for 3 here.
Yeah, well, if that's too much for you as a coach, then...
No, but it's just an extra thing that you don't normally... Like, you don't want extra things to think about when you've got a roster of 100 and you got to trim it down.
They're not evaluating anybody. They're killing time and staring out across the field and looking at a guy.
They're definitely evaluating
this guy can't
in preseason.
Run. This guy can't catch. This guy can't throw.
Every coach has made up their mind on day one that, all right, these are my guys.
Yeah.
These other guys are just...
You're looking at...
running around the field for some reason.
2, maybe 3 people that you haven't already... rostered. First of all, you start with everybody with a contract. They're on the team
for the most part.
Yeah,
not
and
always.
And then you're looking at a couple of people. I mean, I
don't know. I don't think...
overstate the meritocracy that you think is occurring in the second half of the 3rd preseason game.
I think there's valuable stuff going on there and good player evaluation. I'm glued to my television.
We will watch the 3rd preseason game, and we'll see who makes the team.
All right, let's talk about the punt rules that they've got. So the new punt rule is such that you cannot cross the line of scrimmage until the ball is punted.
Yeah, it's clearly designed to make punt return a weapon. Which in a lot of ways in the NFL, it no longer is. Punt coverage teams are so fast that, I think it's a couple things. I think there's also some player safety because...
There's definitely player safety because you don't have to, instead of imposing the 5-yard halo that we've got in the CFL or the fair catch, which is where, like, the CFL system is pretty safe. But the fair catch system is pretty dicey because people don't always fair catch when they should, and you see a ton of knockout hits on those.
How the referees are going to
judge
whether the line left before the thump of the ball or not.
It's a tough one.
But I think anything that challenges coaches' preconceived belief about what should happen on third or fourth down is a good thing for football. I think that the mindless, don't even get me started on punting from the 50. I think that the mindless, fourth down, time to punt is I just have no time for it.
Well, I think this is going to encourage teams to go for it a lot more because you're going to have big punt returns.
Terrific.
If you don't have your gunners downfield, there's a lot of space for a return to be set up. So you're going to have teams that will automatically go for it on fourth and 2, fourth and 3.
Yeah, I think it's a terrific idea.
No, me too. I like that part of it. I still think it's weird, but I find this rule change much easier to digest than the 3-point PAT. All right, they got a couple of rules in here as well to speed up the game. So 25-second play clock, I'm a big fan of that. A lot of their timing rules look a lot like Canadian high school, actually. So they're not going to be stopping the clock on incomplete passes until it gets under 2 minutes. In Canadian ball, we see that under 3 minutes. But they have even fewer stoppages than the CFL game. It does look like Canadian high school where that clock is just going to be running a lot of the time. I believe it stops on change of possession. Obviously, it will stop for commercial breaks and stuff like that. But it's going to be a much shorter game, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, my hope would be that that the people in charge of the CFL are open to these kinds of ideas, that they are actively thinking about ways to make the game faster, to make it more appealing for television, ways to make the game, especially now as the NFL becomes a little more CFL-like, ways to differentiate ourselves from the CFL game, because we're not as different as we were 20 years ago. A lot of American teams play what they call the CFL style, that you got 3 downs to make a first, that you're playing to try and get conversions on down 2 instead of, banging it up the middle for 1, 2, 3. So I think it would be nice to try and come up with some stuff to make our league a little more idiosyncratic.
What I like about it is just that the XFL is not going to be filled with the most talented players in the world from top to bottom. And we've seen other experimental leagues come out, and those games sometimes take 3 days to play. And I like that this will be over in 2 hours for a league like that.
That last league that lasted 2 months was an abomination.
It was painful. Those games were so painful.
The game was 4 hours long, and you had guys who couldn't cut it in the NFL throwing balls into the ground, and then they would run up the middle for 2 yards. I mean, it was.
I just thought it was nonstop running up the middle. Every play was like a 4-yard dive at best.
What was the point? And then they hired all these washout rehash coaches. I mean, it just. It was such a missed opportunity, and I think the XFL, Vince McMahon knows how to make violence entertaining, and I think that it was interesting is how different the mindset is. Where the last XFL was, this ain't your dad's football league, and it was sort of unbridled violence. From the kickoff chase down to a variety of things. And now this league is more branding itself as the safety league. I mean, the commissioner is Andrew Luck's dad, who got chased out of the NFL with concussions and injuries. So I think it's a real snapshot of how our relationship with football has changed and where football is heading in the future, if there is going to be a future.
Well, the last rule we want to talk about is entirely about player safety, and that's their kickoff rule. So this is the most I like the thought behind this. This is obviously aimed at reducing player injury, concussions especially. This is going to look really weird. And I know it's going to take a lot of heat. But like at the core of it, the rule is good. I just don't know if I can deal with the visuals of what this looks like. So let me explain what their kickoff is going to look like as I understand it. So you got Team A and Team B, right? Team A is kicking off. Their kicker is standing at their own 25-yard line. The rest of his coverage team is standing at the opposing 35-yard line. So it's just the kicker down in his own end on the 25. The rest of his coverage team is on Team B's 35-yard line. Team B's kickoff return team is standing on their own 30-yard line, 5 yards away. Team A, the coverage team, cannot move until the Team B returner, or I suppose anyone on Team B, touches the ball. So they've got to stay waiting on the 35 until someone on Team B touches the ball, and now they can go, and there's only a 5-yard cushion between them and the return team on Team B. That's going to look really weird, but it's going to eliminate high-speed collisions.
Yeah, the evidence is very clear.
Now, that kicker may come flying in from 70 yards away and clock somebody.
Well, maybe if they start drafting huge kickers. I don't think they're worried about that.
No.
The evidence is pretty clear that the percentage of concussions that are incurred on kickoff is, somewhere between 20 to 25% of the concussions in the sport, and that's madness.
It's a problem. It's a serious problem that needs to be addressed. But my argument would be this just to me looks so weird. Like, why not just get rid of kickoffs? I would be okay with getting rid of kickoffs. I don't like the idea of getting rid of kickoffs, but I realize that kickoffs are a problem, and if they're going to be addressed, I think I would rather just have no kickoffs as opposed to, choosing to do this sort of circus kickoff.
Yeah, I like the outside the box thinking of it. I think that the image of a kickoff starting the game is really the only thing that they're trying to hold on to. I don't think anybody cares in the CFL when a team chooses to start with the ball instead of being kicked off to them. So it's almost really like the opening kickoff to each half is the ceremonial thing they need to keep. And then after those two kickoffs, have no kickoffs. Just have, for me, you have your start of the game kickoff and, your start of the half kickoff, and everything else, I agree with you. I think everything else should just be start with the ball.
Well, let's talk about what the NFL Pro Bowl is doing this year, because the NFL was always very stubborn with regards to rule changes, and we've seen them over the years become a lot more CFL-like as they realize that it's just more exciting. But this rule is this Pro Bowl rule is pretty interesting. So they're not going to have kickoffs at all in the Pro Bowl. After you score a touchdown, you have a choice. So you score a touchdown, you can now either give the other team the ball on their own 25, or if you'd like to, you can take the ball yourself at your own 25-yard line and have a 4th and 15 play, which is basically how they're going to address the onside kick. So instead of having an onside kick, now you can just choose to take the ball yourself at your own 25. It's 4th and 15. If you don't convert, they take over at your 25-yard line or wherever the ball is dead. But it gives you a chance to recover the ball, I guess, to keep the game alive. And I think that's an interesting rule change that still addresses player safety, gets rid of the onside kick, which is a player safety concern, gets rid of kickoffs, which is another player safety concern. So I think those are going to be interesting to see. That's all the time we're going to have for today. For JB, I'm Ben Grant. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and we will see you next time.